What happens when a place meant for healing, grace, and love, the church itself, suddenly turns into a stage for public humiliation? A pastor in Texas stunned his congregation when he chose to rebuke a singer openly, right in front of everyone, leaving the performer humiliated and the crowd in shock. But just as the controversy looked like it couldn't get any more intense, gospel legend Marvin Sapp decided to step in. What he had to say has the entire faith community in an uproar. You won't believe how this situation unfolds, and the hidden truths behind this scandal could forever shift the way you view church leadership. Church drama has always been a sensitive subject, but this particular story raises the bar even higher. Not long ago, a startling incident took place in a Texas church. When a pastor embarrassed a singer during a live service, he called them out in front of the entire congregation. The moment was captured on camera, spreading across social media like wildfire, and sparking fiery debates about respect, humility, and the meaning of true leadership in ministry. But here's where things take an unexpected turn. Gospel legend Marvin Sapp, best known for hits like Never Would Have Made It and for his decades of influence in gospel music, felt he could no longer remain silent. He spoke up, weighing in publicly, and his statement has divided singers, church members, and pastors everywhere. In today's video, we'll break down exactly what took place in that Texas church, why Marvin Sapp decided to get involved, and how this single act of public rebuke has triggered wider conversations about pride, church culture, and accountability among leaders. We'll walk through the full timeline, the reactions of the congregation and online voices, and Marvin Sapp's powerful response. Along the way, we'll also uncover surprising truths that many in the church would rather keep hidden. So stay with us until the very end, because this isn't simply about a pastor and a singer. This is about the condition of the modern church, the way leaders use their authority, and the thin line between correction and humiliation. Trust me, by the time we finish, you'll be asking yourself, was this really about guiding someone spiritually, or was it more about ego and control? To grasp the outrage around the situation, we've got to start at the very beginning, the Sunday service when everything took place. What was expected to be a normal worship experience turned into something unforgettable. The sanctuary was packed, the praise team was on stage, and as in countless churches across America, the congregation was ready for a morning of prayer, song, and the preached word. But instead of encouragement and unity, what unfolded left people stunned, embarrassed, and confused. A young singer had been invited to minister in song that day. From all accounts, this individual carried both passion and talent, eager to share their gift with the church family. They began singing, pouring heart and soul into the performance, connecting deeply with the crowd, creating what should have been a moment of inspiration, but then the pastor abruptly interrupted. According to eyewitnesses and the viral clip circulating online, he stopped the music mid-performance, turned his focus directly toward the singer, and delivered what many are calling a harsh public rebuke. Rather than offering a gentle word of correction privately, the pastor chose to scold the singer openly, pointing out supposed mistakes in the steps, or even spiritual flaws before the entire congregation. The congregation grew silent, some audibly gasped, others shifted uneasily in their seats, and a few even chose to walk out. What should have been a worship service filled with encouragement had instead turned into a spectacle. In the social media clips, the singer can be seen standing there, visibly shaken, eyes cast downward, body stiff, unsure of how to even respond, as the pastor's voice echoed through the microphone. Members of the praise team appeared stunned, and whispers began to ripple quickly through the pews. For most who later watched the clip online, the real issue wasn't whether the singer made mistakes, but rather the way the pastor chose to address it. Public humiliation, many argued, has no place in the house of God. A true leader's role, after all, is to guide, uplift, and correct in love, not to tear someone down in front of hundreds. Within just hours, videos of the incident spread to TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The captions were scathing. "Church petty, this is why people walk away from the church. Embarrassment is not discipline." Thousands of comments poured in, with the majority condemning the pastor's actions. A few defended him, insisting leaders must maintain worship standards. But the louder sentiment was outrage, frustration that a person's gift and dignity could be treated so harshly before the public eye. And this is where the situation began to intensify, because it wasn't only churchgoers or random social media voices speaking up anymore. Influential figures in the gospel community also began weighing in. asking difficult questions about accountability and whether pastors cross a line when they handle matters in this way. But one voice rose above all the rest, one that simply could not be ignored. Gospel legend Marvin Sapp saw what unfolded, and he had something powerful to say. When the video of the Texas pastor rebuking the singer first went viral, it was already causing waves online. Yet what turned the incident into a national conversation inside the faith community was the reaction from one of gospel music's greatest icons, Marvin Sapp. He's not only a household name in gospel, but a cultural force. His song Never Would Have Made It became a worldwide anthem of hope, sung in churches, played on radio, and even crossing into mainstream circles. Beyond music, he's also a pastor, a recording artist, and a respected leader whose influence extends far and wide. So when a figure of his stature speaks, the entire church world pays attention, and Sapp did not hold back. His response, which spread rapidly across Instagram and Facebook, addressed not just the Texas church incident, but the broader culture of humiliation that exists in many churches. His words were sharp, direct, and convicting. He reminded everyone that while correction is sometimes needed, public rebuke should never be the first step. According to Sapp, a pastor's role is to build people up, even when critique is required, not to break them down in front of a crowd. He wrote that leaders hold a biblical responsibility to restore with love, not humiliate. He stressed that correction should, whenever possible, be given privately. Because public shaming doesn't produce growth, it produces trauma. His message struck a chord with countless people who had experienced the same treatment in their own church settings, reopening painful memories for those once silenced or embarrassed in the name of discipline. What made Sapp's statement especially impactful was how personal it felt. He spoke out of his own decades of experience as a pastor, as a mentor, and as someone who has worked with countless young singers and musicians over the years. He explained that in his role as a leader, he had witnessed countless moments where someone stumbled or fell short on stage. But in those situations, his responsibility wasn't to shame them publicly, it was to guide them forward. That, he argued, is what true leadership looks like in practice. Marvin Sapp's statement quickly went viral. Screenshots of his words spread across social media with captions such as, "Thank you, Marvin, for finally saying what needed to be said." And it's this very reason many pointed out that he is so highly respected not only as a gospel artist, but also as a pastor. Choir directors, gospel singers, and even everyday church members poured into his comment sections with words of agreement. For many, his voice gave weight and validation to the outrage they had already been feeling. But not everyone stood with him. Some pastors and leaders pushed back, claiming that Marvin Sapp was undermining pulpit authority by publicly challenging another pastor. They argued that public correction, at times, is necessary in order to maintain order in the church, particularly when the integrity of worship is on the line. This disagreement sparked yet another wave of heated debate. Was Marvin Sapp standing up for the dignity of artists, or was he overstepping boundaries by calling out a fellow leader? The tension revealed something deeper at play within church culture, the clash between long-standing authority and the call for modern accountability. For decades, pastors have been treated as unquestionable voices in their congregations. But in today's world of social media and transparency, that once uncheckable dynamic is facing challenges. Marvin Sapp's response placed him squarely in the center of that struggle. And while his words brought healing and comfort to many, they also raised an even bigger question. If gospel legends now feel compelled to speak out against petty church behavior, what does that reveal about the true state of the modern church? But before we dive deeper into that bigger issue, we need to pause and look at how the wider public reacted, not just the fans online, but other gospel artists, respected church leaders, and even people who usually stay away from church drama. Their voices gave this story a volume and reach that made it impossible for church circles, YouTube channels, and social media communities to ignore. Marvin Sapp's statement lit the match. The public's reaction turned that spark into a blazing fire. The incident, coupled with his response, became the centerpiece of heated debate, not only inside church walls, but across TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And what made the backlash so powerful was the wide spectrum of voices adding to it. On one side, there was outrage. Thousands of gospel fans, church members, and even people who admitted they hadn't set foot in a church for years expressed their anger and heartbreak over how the Texas pastor handled the moment. For many, the viral clip represented more than just one embarrassed singer. it resurfaced their own painful experiences. Comments poured in like, "This happened to me when I was a teenager in church. I never sang again." Or, "This is exactly why young people are leaving. They come looking for love and leave with trauma." Others wrote, "Correct in private, celebrate in public." That's real leadership. TikTok creators began stitching the viral clip, sharing their own stories of being humiliated by leaders in front of congregations. Some of those videos racked up hundreds of thousands of views as people opened up about the long-lasting damage public shaming caused. What began as a single local church scandal quickly grew into a mirror reflecting something much larger, a culture of pride and power dynamics, entrenched in many churches, but it wasn't all one-sided outrage. A smaller, yet vocal group of commenters stood up to defend the Texas pastor's choice. They insisted that keeping the spirit of excellence in worship sometimes demands real-time correction. In their perspective, the singer's misstep, whether it was hitting the wrong note, straying off from the assigned song, or failing to prepare adequately, needed to be addressed right there and then, warranted a public response. They argued because worship isn't about performance, it's about honoring God. As one pastor wrote online, "Sometimes correction hurts, but it's necessary. If you can't handle that, maybe the pulpit isn't where you belong." This division revealed just how deeply split church culture really is when it comes to styles of leadership. Some still hold tightly to traditional, authoritative models where pastors function as unquestioned spiritual fathers. Others push for a newer, more compassionate approach to leadership, one that places emotional well-being above public discipline. Gospel artists and choir directors also weighed in. Some stood with Marvin Sapp, admitting they had witnessed far too many young talents abandon music altogether after being humiliated in church. Others, however, quietly sided with the Texas pastor, pointing out that gospel music has always carried high standards and accountability, even when it comes publicly as part of the territory. What's fascinating is that this controversy also reached far beyond the church walls. Secular commentators on Twitter, YouTube, and other platforms began dissecting the situation as an example of toxic leadership and abuse of authority. For them, this wasn't about doctrine or theology, it was about basic human dignity. And that made the story resonate even more widely. The hashtags themselves revealed just how far the conversation spread. #ChurchPetty began trending among younger users, mocking the pastor's actions, while #StandWithSinger circulated among musicians, demanding that artists be treated with respect. Meanwhile, Marvin Sapp's name was trending as fans rallied behind him, praising his boldness in addressing an issue so many had been too hesitant to speak on. Church members from across the country even began tagging their own leaders, calling for accountability and demanding answers about whether public rebuke has any rightful place in worship at all. Very quickly, this was no longer just a Texas story, it became a national one. The debate spilled into Bible studies, Sunday schools, and even choir rehearsals across America. But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from within Marvin Sapp's own circle. Reports suggest that some of his pastoral peers privately warned him that stepping into the controversy would expose him to criticism. Yet the overwhelming wave of support from both fans and fellow artists seemed to prove otherwise. Many felt it was long overdue for someone of his stature to confront what they believed had gone wrong in church culture. Still, beneath all the noise and debate, one question continued to echo: why are so many leaders choosing humiliation in public over guidance in private? And that very question leads us straight into the deeper issue: what this incident reveals about the current state of church leadership. While the Texas church rebuke initially drew attention for its shock value, the discussions it triggered stretch far beyond a single singer and a single pastor. At its core, this controversy has uncovered long-standing tensions within modern church culture and the shifting expectations of congregations today. Traditionally, churches have operated under strict hierarchical systems. In those models, pastors were seen as spiritual authorities whose word was rarely, if ever, challenged. Within that framework, public correction was considered a valid tool to maintain order, enforce standards, and preserve the sanctity of worship. And for decades, that approach went unquestioned. Congregations once accepted this dynamic without hesitation, but the times are shifting. Modern churchgoers now expect transparency, accountability, and empathy from their leaders. The growth of social media has amplified voices that were once left unheard, giving congregants, musicians, and ministry staff the ability to share their experiences far and wide. Humiliation, even when framed as discipline, is under increasing scrutiny. And when a public rebuke like the one in Texas goes viral, it becomes a symbol of deeper leadership issues rather than a standalone event. Theologians and experts point out that the line between discipline and abuse is extremely thin. When discipline is carried out in love and in private, it can correct, guide, and strengthen. Humiliation, however, destroys trust, instills fear, and can drive away talented individuals from ministry altogether. In this context, the Texas incident reveals the dangers of leadership that elevates ego above stewardship, Marvin Sapp's response highlights. Another crucial point: prominent voices have the ability to shape church culture by directly speaking on these issues. Sapp didn't just defend the singer. He also sent a powerful message to church leaders everywhere that true leadership is measured not by ruling through fear, but by nurturing growth and preserving dignity. The debate further exposes the generational divide within the church. Younger congregants, especially millennials and Gen Z, are far less willing to tolerate public humiliation. Their values lean toward inclusivity, emotional intelligence, and mutual respect. Meanwhile, older members often hold to traditional models of authority, convinced that strict correction ensures sanctity and order. This clash of expectations has fueled wider discussions about how churches can balance reverence, accountability, and compassion. Another layer of the controversy lies in the role of gospel music within church culture. Singers and musicians are not merely entertainers, they are ministers. Their calling is to deliver messages of worship, hope, and faith. To publicly shame a singer undermines not only their confidence, but also the spiritual experience of the congregation itself. Which leads to vital questions. How should leaders support ministry staff while maintaining standards? How can they correct without belittling the gifts God has placed in others? And how can church authority evolve to meet modern expectations while still preserving its core foundations? Social media has pushed this conversation to the forefront. Videos, commentary, and clips have reached millions, creating discussions in spaces that were once limited to Bible studies, choir rehearsals, and pastoral training. The viral spread of this incident ensures that its lessons will be debated and studied for years too. Here's the surprising part. Many don't realize that incidents like this are more frequent than most assume. Stories of humiliation and public rebuke appear periodically, but they rarely reach visibility until someone like Marvin Sapp amplifies the moment. His intervention has forced churches across the country to wrestle with tough questions about leadership, accountability, and the fragile balance between correction and compassion. And here's where it becomes even more compelling as debates continue. Many church leaders are reportedly re-examining how they handle mistakes in ministry, especially in public roles. Some have started implementing mentorship programs, private feedback systems, and stronger pastoral training to prevent situations like the Texas rebuke from happening again. The ripple effect of this single event is shaping the future of church leadership and ministry culture in ways no one could have foreseen.